Tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're at and, what you're trying to do, and give me some
Yeah.
background.
Yeah. So I'm based in BC in Canada. I recently just graduated from school. So I did a diploma, an online diploma program. It was super intense. It was like an 18-month long intensive program, like boot camp almost. I just kind of like banged it out and got it done. And it was absolutely awesome. I've always been an artist. I have like art behind me and stuff, but I never really thought I could, as a millennial, you're kind of told by your parents, like, you got to go to school, you got to get a realistic job. That's like, so I kind of bounced around a lot, um many different industries, and was never really happy. I've done it all. I've worked with dogs, I've worked in customer service, training people, hiring people, you name it. And so I love working with people. That's something that I know, but I also love art. And so I wanted to I just did it. I have a kid and I have a house, and I was like, I just need to do it. Like, it's now or never. And I knew that I couldn't, I'm too scattered to self-teach myself like in that aspect of all the programs. So I decided to go to school, and it was really great. I learned a lot. I'm very much an A-type personality, so I put everything into it. And um I'm really happy with how far I've come in the last like 2 years just working on things. And I've really come to love branding and packaging design. So those are like my two things that I like really love doing. And within that, I really try to incorporate my illustrative style into those things. So like my painterly kind of aspect to my stuff. So yeah, so I'm working on my website. I think I told you that before. My website is like a mess right now. And then so I sent you my PDF of my portfolio that is the most recent update, but I'm actually doing rebranding myself as well right now. So a lot of it's going to change. So this is like the perfect time to get a review on my portfolio.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, sorry, I talk a lot too, so
No, no worries. No worries. No, no, all that's good. So yeah, I clicked through your portfolio a bit, your PDF. I'll pull it up in a little bit.
Mhm.
So you got out of this program, and I guess now, are you kind of like freelancing? Are you looking for jobs?
Yeah,
Like,
a bit of both, because I'm just like, I got to get back to work. Like it's been 6 months, and I've been sending stuff out like to everyone, reaching out to like any connections I've had in the past. I've worked for like really big companies in the past, so I have like a lot of connections where they've gone on to other different companies that would be really great to work for. But because I'm a noob and it's really hard, I'm finding it super difficult also with all the tech layoffs and stuff. Just getting my stuff out there. I'm just sending it to like literally anyone who will look at it. And just so that I'm in people's like minds. I've been trying to do some freelance, and I've found it difficult because people don't really value how much work it takes to like design a brand and design a logo. So when I tell them it's going to cost X amount of dollars, I think I told you this. We were in a live chat, or a live, and I was telling you how I got them to say yes to the 5K. And then they actually turned around and said no. They're like, nope, it's
oh,
too much money. And I was like, but it's like for a full, like, this is like 8 weeks of work for me. Like,
sure, yeah.
so I don't think that they fully understand that like you're essentially paying my salary for 8 weeks. And yeah, it's tough, I find. I don't know if I should just start just saying yes to everything, but then I don't want to get burnt out. But at this point, I kind of just like, I need something. So I'm sending resumes, I'm sending my portfolio, I'm on Facebook, letting people know I'm open for Facebook and Instagram, letting people know I'm open for work. And yeah, so any help.
Totally.
Yeah.
Um, so let's look at, so before we look at your portfolio,
Mhm.
let's talk about like clients and stuff like that, or like jobs, because um I think, having that idea of if you want to go freelance versus if you want to like find a full-time job
I would,
is
yeah,
different
I
approaches.
way, way, way want to do freelance more. Like that is my dream. I'm I've struggled with some stuff in the past with my health, my mental health and stuff. And so for me, I'm in a suburb, and having the ability to work from home is huge for me, especially with having a kid and stuff like that. I used to work downtown, and the commute killed me. So I just like, I couldn't do it. Like, it was mentally draining and stressful for me. And I would rather like be able to call my own shots when it comes to like, and not feel guilty about that. Like, I find that if I'm reporting to someone, and like having to, it's time. This is something I've always wanted to do. And my ultimate dream is to just work for myself.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's approach it from this idea of
Yeah.
freelancing.
Yeah.
Um,
Instead of like, I don't
so
want to have to work for people, but if I have to, I have to,
sure. Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
freelancing, you're still working for people. It's just
Yeah,
like a
I know that.
different
I
sort of
understand.
process.
Yeah.
So really quickly, like on clients and stuff like that, you're talking about like reaching out to people and trying to kind of like, in a way, it sounds like you're trying to convince them that they need to do these things, and
No,
they're
those
not coming up on like the payment, or they don't have the budget.
yeah, the people that actually I've been doing proposals to have been just they've come to me. So they've been through like my husband and like friends, stuff like that, or people finding me through like the community, like Facebook groups, things like that. Because just like I'm just thinking like the audience and stuff like that, they've been more finding me through there. And I think that they get a little bit of the sticker shock. But otherwise, when I was sending my portfolios, I was just like sending it to people I know that like work in like entertainment and things like that. And I'm just like, hey, take a look at this. Let me know if you have anything that comes up that might suit what you guys have. Like, kind of just getting my name out there, I guess,
Mhm.
in that sense.
And and really quickly,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna pull up your portfolio and we can go
Yeah.
through this a bit, because
Sounds good.
I have a few questions. So you mentioned like design and branding, and you have this illustrative style, but like immediately before, like I clicked on this a few nights ago, I think when you first scheduled, like I started looking at this as like, oh, she's an illustrator. But then I get to some of this stuff and I'm like, okay, excuse me. I was like, okay, I could see this is going, this is pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there's like a little bit of confusion, like just in that moment of like, are you an illustrator? Are you a graphic designer? What do you want to
Gotcha.
do?
Should
Um,
I was considering I was like splitting it into 3 different portfolios.
you could, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, depending on the type of work you're going after, if again, from what you've mentioned of like, yeah, I was working with a client and I sent a proposal for branding, um, then my thought was that like, yeah, you should like some of this stuff, yeah, it's great to have, but at the end of the day, like me personally, I'm more interested in this stuff in that
Yeah.
lens, right?
Gotcha.
Um,
Like more like
so
product instead rather than my like posters and advertising.
yeah,
Posters and advertising isn't like something I really like love to say the least. Like I just like, because I think it was just because in school we had to come up with our own copy, and I'm not like very good with my copy. I struggle with that a bit, but visuals I'm good.
what are these projects? Are these just from
These were from school. So
school?
they kind of just give us like a basic thing. So this one was like create a beauty product that has 3 products. It's a gift set, and has like a gift box. And so we got free reign for everything else, like for doing all of our research. And then like this one was just like an energy drink. The other one was that one up there was a tea box that we had to create, but then we had to also later on in the semester we had to create like a pop display. So
Mhm.
I did a pop display for this one. So that was like kind of 2 projects combined. So yeah,
Mhm.
I did that all like flat lay, like I have the die lines and everything for this. And then I did it 3D rendered it all and did that in like, it's like I did that all. That was difficult, but it was good.
Sure. So, you mentioned like having 3 different portfolios. That's
Yes.
great. I would, before you just go and start splitting, things up,
Yeah.
I think you need to think about like the type of work that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they are in 3 different buckets, great, that's fine. Then that's where you like start to say like, yeah, I'm going to make 3 different portfolios. I'm going to send this work to this type of person, this work to that type of person, whatever. Because I could see that totally being like something that you do. With that said, this portfolio, what's happening, I believe, is that like you're trying to show your illustration, you're trying to show your packaging, you're trying to show your branding. And instead of getting, you know, taking from my perspective, like out of this stuff, this is more interesting to me, this packaging and branding. Like, I think this is really great. Did you do everything with all of these projects? So like, again,
everything.
So typography, design, layout, everything. Cool,
Everything.
great.
Yeah,
Branding. This is way more interesting for me because I think one, I mean, they're great designs. I think they're very striking and I can see this working. But the problem is that like, I'm only getting one small piece of lucidity, you know?
Gotcha.
I'm only getting one small piece of like curl please. Like I want to see a case study on these projects. And that essentially would be your like graphic design and branding portfolio.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah,
I
have like all the research and everything. And then my teacher, when we were doing our portfolio course, like we had 2 semesters of portfolio development, he was like, get rid of all of that. And I'm like, but it's my process.
I mean, I would argue with the professor that like, sure, this works in the school setting. And that's probably, you know, why. But, you know, you mentioned before, like you've been talking to people that are kind of, you know, when you deliver them the proposal are in a bit of sticker shock. And like a symptom of that is just seeing like this one image and being like, oh, cool, great. Like they probably whipped that up really quickly and they did it for like, you know, a low price and didn't do anything. Like no one is going to wonder or think about anything other than this one image. They'll think like, oh, it looks great. Wow, that's really well done. But because you've sort of sold it short, that gives them all the more reason to think like, oh, this was cheap. You know, I can get like a low price for this. At least that's my belief. Yeah, exactly. They're not seeing anything else you put into it. They're not seeing the and when you say research and stuff like that, I would also be really particular about how you convey that. You know, don't just like maybe have an image of a scanner or a note or something like that. But like, you know, again, you want to editorialize these things because you're telling a story every project. So how did you get to this point? How did you, you know, I want to see stills of the other products, you know, I want to see like the backs and the sides and all this other stuff. And then I want to also know more about how you arrived to this. And then I want to see like the elements of this, like, when you mentioned that you do illustration and you want to work that into your style, that's awesome. Great. But don't let that be like the thing that is like, oh, I don't know how to,
I'm an illustrative designer.
You know, like I think if anything for you, because you know, I'm going to go ahead and say that you are pretty talented and you can figure out how to use illustration, create it and use it in your designs. And you're having that thought process like already happen in a way that works. That's great.
It's the end product of presenting all the stuff that I do.
But I mean, I think if you're, you know, again, you know, I think you have that idea that like you want to be your own business and you have a skill or you have skills that can be used in different ways. So this is your graphic design way. You know, I don't like to mention it like this way, but like, again, because you said you're an illustrator and you can do that, like your illustration style, this is how you work that in. But again, like I would still present myself as like a graphic designer who works with brands and things like that.
Makes
sense. It's great that yes, you're an illustrator, but you don't need to like really hit people over the head when you're showing them work like this. Like it doesn't matter how you get there or what you call yourself. This is like what your product is, right? Like this is what you're selling. And so if you want to work with me, this is what you're getting, you know, things that look like this, you know?
Yes.
You don't need to confuse people with like, I'm an illustrator and I work that into my design and all that stuff. Especially again, if you're,
because they can see it. I don't need to.
Yeah. We're talking about that. Like you're going to take your skills and productize them and present them in different ways. So this is your graphic design. We're getting that. I think like we can kind of move this to the side. And if you have any other questions, we could talk about it later, but I want to move this to the side.
Okay.
Now, when we talk, also this too, like this idea where you need to separate package design, corporate branding. Again, with the design, I want to see big case studies. I want to see a little bit more information. I don't want to see less, more images necessarily all on the page. I think you need to give yourself anywhere
Yeah.
from like 5 to 6 pages per project to
Ooh,
really
okay.
go through.
Then
You
I'll have to
know,
trim her down then. That's going to be a big, otherwise if I have all those in there, I'll be large. One of my favorite projects is down lower, and I think I should have put it up more, but
but I also don't think like you should have all of them necessary. Like you have some
no,
good work here. Like I'm looking really quickly, like, this seems to be like well put together.
that was a big one.
You're
Yeah.
thoughtful about this stuff. You have some cool designs. Great. Figure out how to editorialize these in, let's see, how many pages do you have for this? 1, 2, 3,
30.
4 pages. I would pick 3 projects, 3 of your best ones, your most complete, your most comprehensive. I'd give those each like 5 to 6 pages, and I'd really try to like use each page to tell the story and take your time.
Okay.
Have an introduction, have a breakdown of, or an anatomy of like the logo and things like that.
Okay.
I think these
Yeah, because I
layouts
have
could
all the,
really be worked. These layouts are
okay.
kind of, they're funky to me. They're not making
I
sense,
completely agree.
Yeah, I think you need to be more playful with like this whole thing doesn't have to follow a template. Maybe like your cover, like when you
I know
introduce a
I had
project,
it all
sure.
different. And then my instructor was like, why are all the pages different? You should just have them all laid out the same.
They
And I'm like,
could be, but again, like
but I'm
whatever
like
is
way
gonna
more funky than
better
that.
tell the story for you, whatever's
Yeah.
gonna work. Sure, there should be like one or a couple of underlying elements throughout the whole thing that makes sense, like whether that's the page number or your covers, whatever.
Yeah.
But I find that each project that I include on my website or my portfolio is gonna have a different way or a different tone when telling the story. So that
Okay.
layout for me changes sometimes,
That makes sense. Yeah. So like, would you suggest I pick projects that are like, I'm going to go with my branding ones probably because they are more in depth. Like the one for Eden Seed Company, that was a really large project that I worked on with because it has packaging design in it.
Mhm.
And then and then also the next one, which I think is my, yeah, because this one I did do the illustrations for this. I won't point it out too much, but I did do all the paintings on these ones. And then so I did magazines, and then the next one, which is Casa Dolce. So this was a rebrand for a business that I did. And this one I actually carried it throughout like 4 semesters and did it in a bunch of different classes. So I did like the advertising. So I think that the advertising I should blow up and make bigger because I did put a lot of work into those. And then I did all the UI UX for that as well.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah,
was,
I think you need to choose. It's great that you have, like a kind of like a spectrum of some of the work that you've done for some of your projects. I think you need to start asking yourself the questions of like, what is it that I want to do? Sure, you did
yeah,
the UI UX for like the
but
app
I don't want to
design
do
or
that
like,
for,
the
yeah,
visual. Like, it's great to show it. Is that what you want to do at the end of the day? Or do
no.
you want to work with more companies? Oh shit, I'm not recording this. Hold on. Did this go off?
I think it was recording it
It's
actually.
recording to the
Yeah.
cloud, but
Yeah.
the transcript, damn. Anyway, so let me just wait for a second while this pops up. But at the end of the day, like what is the thing that you like working on the most in terms of like when you work with clients? What is the thing that you can in a way, like make a living? Like what do you want to be,
Yeah.
charging for this stuff? Like you kind of need to start asking yourself those questions, because I
Yeah.
think that's going to inform like what is the most important thing that I show these people when I am talking to them about working together.
Yeah. And I think that that's like definitely more my branding, and because from my branding, I can do like packaging design. So that's like can be
Mhm.
like a part of it. It doesn't have to be like exclusive, I guess. But definitely like I love branding in general. I've been doing like a whole bunch of like online challenges and stuff too, just to try to stay on top of everything and try some new things out. So yeah, I think I need to definitely thin out the portfolio and really do those case studies. So I have all the information already. It's just putting it in there and making it look good.
Exactly. So let's talk about your illustration stuff really quickly.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to just like say, okay, now you're just a graphic designer. That's all you're going to do is branding and stuff like that. Because, you know, you have that interest, and some of this stuff is really good. I think separating this stuff out is really is probably the best solution.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you need to kind of go through the exercise of like, where does this work? Where does the stuff that I like to do, where does it apply the best? You know, who are the people that would appreciate this work? Who are the people that are going to actually need more work like this in the future for something, whatever it may be? And really start from there and then figure out how to present this stuff. Thing that I've always hated with like some Illustrator portfolios that I've seen is that like everything always falls into like the, here's the poster because it's in a frame and this is the work, but I've illustrated this part. And let me draw so you can see, like I illustrated this part and then this is the poster. And I'm sure you did the typography and stuff like that. That's great.
Yeah.
Whatever. But like, this is the slide, right? Like here's like the conversation always starts off with, here's my illustrations and posters, and here's a slide with each illustration and poster. And I've always hated that. I think it is like, again, such a short sell.
I know. I
from
had
an
them all in
illustrator.
mock-ups too, and then I got told to get rid of them.
Well, I mean, not
They're
even the
all like,
mock-ups. It's just such a like, you know, you look at this stuff, as someone who looks at portfolios and can kind of like understand work that goes into this stuff, this could have taken you minutes, this could have taken you hours. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's more on the hours part.
Yes.
But like what you're doing at the end of all of that work is just putting it in a frame anyway, and then slapping some typography on it and calling it a day, you know? And like, so I've always believed, like, how do we editorialize this work again, you know? And part of it, I think, is like, I've always thought, again, I love using slides as a way of pacing myself through a presentation, and also, you know, really to tell that story. So like if I were to write a quick, you know, script almost or something, you know, a headline for each slide or each bit of this project, I'd want one slide to one headline. So, you know, the first slide would be like the introduction of like Bard on the beach, and like maybe it's the whole illustration in the background or something, or maybe it's just the illustration. And then you know, you start to go into like the details of the illustration itself, or maybe you just go, maybe there's a slide about all the details and elements. Yeah, you know, like at the end of the day, again, what happens here is that like you slap it on the page, here's the poster, I made the poster, and people don't appreciate the detail, they don't appreciate the work, they don't understand the process, they think it is just whipped up in X amount of time and it's fast and cheap, you know, like because you're creative, you could do this easily, and you can spend, you know, I can spend not a lot of money on it. Like that's kind of the way people think about it.
It's the harsh truth, right? They're like,
yeah. So I mean, you know, like because of that, you know, how do we eliminate that mistake, right? How do we kind of or diagnose that mistake? So we tell the story, we take our time, we show the details that go into it. Now, this can take shape in many different forms because you know, maybe you have a recording of a screen recording of the whole illustration, and that could go somewhere on the website or whatever. Or these are all on separate layers, and you could start to really separate those and use those throughout the page or throughout each slide, whatever it may be.
That's a good idea.
But
like even maybe like focus on the donkey head and like pull that out and like all the little details.
You know, like you could almost do a dissection, right? Where because you have these on layers, and perhaps this is another way of talking about, like, imagine if this was edge to edge, you know, it took up the whole right side, and maybe each slide, you know, like you're talking about a specific layer or step or in the process. So, you know, maybe everything else is at like a 10% opacity, and the foreground here is like 100%, and you're like, oh, whenever I start my process, I start with laying in the texture and blah, 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 blah. And then, the next slide is like the second step. After that, I knew that, I started to sketch in these parts and pieces, and they're like 100% opacity and everything else is kind of like 10% or whatever. And you could build off of that, like that's
That's a good
something that you could
idea.
do.
Yeah. Like, so I
Especially for
checked
something
my,
like this, where it's like a little bit more storytelling.
yeah, that one was fun. That's like one of
Another
my
thing,
favorite projects I did.
another thing I'm not a fan of is if like something is a series, like, okay, this is a cliche that a lot of creatives, designers and illustrators specifically, like get into. It's like the tried and true, music poster series. Like I've done it. I speak to designers a lot that have also done it as like, I want to work in music, so I want to do music posters. Great.
Right?
That's awesome. But I don't ever think there's absolutely ways of getting work where they just hire to do a poster, or they just hire to do some kind of album artwork. And while that is cool, I don't think it's actually as obtainable as some people think. Like, yeah, if you do a lot of great work and you get noticed, then people will start coming to you for that one thing. But when you're just starting off, like, my thought is, yes, you did this illustration, great. How do we use this in a way that seems to be more applicable, that tells more of the story of like what the rest of Tomorrowland would look like if it
Yeah.
went this direction? So that's one way I kind of think of these like posters. Or it is truly like, if this is a series, like I want to hear everything from start to finish about the series, because usually like it is a self-initiated project, and which kind of means at times like I just wanted to be really creative at some point and I wanted to make something, and this is what I made.
Yeah.
So that's
it's
great.
done. It's been done.
But you shouldn't, if that's the case, then like you need to have enough meat to that sandwich of creativity,
Yeah, absolutely.
to explain it to someone or to present it. If it's just something you wanted to make just to make it, great. That is great practice. It doesn't go in the portfolio. So like what I'm getting at with this like music poster series is, if it's a series and you want to continue doing it, great, show all of them and talk about how you started that project or that series and ended it, right? And make sure you have enough in between there. If not, then do the other thing that I mentioned, where it's like, take this one poster or this direction and apply it in a different way that isn't just a poster, that can like really tell a story. And if it's not one of those two things, I don't know if they really do much.
No, I think I'm gonna get those out of there. The more I like look at them, and the more my art has evolved, I've like, even though it hasn't been that long, like even in the last like 6 months, I've like, yeah, there's some, I don't know. They don't hit as good as they used to.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I mean, these
yeah.
and again, like these are like, this Tame Impala one's pretty interesting. It's definitely a take on Tame Impala I haven't necessarily seen. But again, like there's so much here there's so much missing from this, that it's not strong, like
Gotcha.
this
Yeah.
isn't doing anything for you,
Mhm.
in a way. If again we're talking about that illustration, separating your work out to be an illustrator and also having an illustrator focused
Mhm.
portfolio, I think
My vector illustrations aren't as strong as my Photoshop illustrations. That's for sure. I know that.
no, well, one, I don't want to, that's definitely not what I'm saying at all.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
not because these are Illustrator, Photoshop, or whatever. It's just that there's not enough story for me to really appreciate this.
Gotcha.
Like,
Yeah,
regardless, whenever, if let's just say you go down, let's walk down this Illustrator path for a bit.
Mhm.
So what do you want to do with illustration? Like, is it like you would love to work on books and things like where do you want to go with that?
Publication isn't like my end all be all. I don't think I think it would be really, really cool to get into publication, but I've been looking at doing like art licensing, like surface patterns, things like that. because I've gotten more into, I haven't added any to my portfolio yet, but I've gotten into a little bit more of like surface patterns and surface design, and like vectorizing some of my like hand drawn stuff into patterns. So like kind of leaning towards what I did down for my Eden Seed company. I made like some really cool surface pattern for that branding I did right there. Yeah, these ones. So those are vectorized, and I did them by hand and then like did a repeat, and I've found some other unique ways that I've to make some patterns. So that's kind of like what I've been looking at more recently, is just seeing if I can do some art licensing with that. But yeah, I'm definitely like career-wise, branding is thing that I like the most and I enjoy the most.
Sure. But I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want you to like totally throw away the illustration idea, because
Yeah.
exactly what you said. There's a TikToker who talks about art licensing a lot.
I know, I follow her. She's yeah. So
Leah,
I'm
I
getting
think her name is,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I follow her and I get lots of tips and stuff. So I've headed out to Winners and looked at the bottom of all the surface patterns on the bags and stuff that they sell there. And I've been reaching out, just seeing what their process is for accepting art licensing. So
Yeah, I mean, so like that is a great example of like, or that's a great place to start. Let's think about this art licensing, right? Like I think it's a great idea. I absolutely should. I'm not saying that you should pursue one more than the other. I think you should be going ham on both.
Yeah, I'm doing like everything.
Try to give a little priority to some things more than others on others. Kind of whatever works for you, figure that out. But like, okay, I'm the person that is going to want to license your work. You send me this. I look at it and go, cool. But like, that's not what I do. Like how do I use this? How do we like know that this is going to work?
Like apply it to things and see like what they can use it for and show them in real like physical ways, whether
I guess like in a way, well, in a way it's kind of like especially in that setting, you're going to be commercializing your work a lot. So it's like, how do we turn this into things that would appeal to that area, that demographic? Again, with that said, even if we weren't to think about like these pattern, just licensing your things out and making them into patterns and stuff like that, like I'd still want to see more of how this illustration would play a particular part in something like Tomorrowland, whether that was a pattern or a sticker or a flyer or a different, material, or like a pair of socks or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, I look at these, they're illustrations, great, but I'm not seeing the life that they could have, and you're not giving me more to kind of feed on in that sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I have like better stuff too. And I know that they say like you're only as good as your worst piece in your portfolio.
Yeah, I guess. Or you could just never have any bad pieces in it.
Yeah, I mean, matter of opinion, I guess, but I definitely think like, I mean, I've been wanting to redo my portfolio even, and so this is a really good starting point for me to shift some stuff around too, because like I definitely want to put my branding in the forefront, and having it at the end of my portfolio maybe not as strategic as I want it to be.
I think definitely separating the work out, having specific objectives behind the work for each is going to be something that works really well for you, something that should definitely should be a priority. Again, for this like illustration work for when you worked with Eden, awesome, but I think it's so meta to have the cover like flat inside a flat slide. And what I always urge people to do, whether it be on like their website or something, is like make just this the web page, like make this the web page. How do I make the web page this? Or how do I make the slide like this or something, like
Gotcha.
Don't waste my time with like giving me the negative space. Like I don't know. I've always thought, like, as simple and as stupid as it sounds, like we can get really granular with some of this stuff, and I can tell you like what I want to see on a slide and stuff like that. And you're going to do what you want to do with it. That's fine with me. these are just like, thoughts, but
Yeah.
what I can't help think what happens is when someone who isn't a creative, isn't a designer, isn't an illustrator comes to your website or sees your portfolio, they look at negative space and they're just like, yeah, it doesn't really look like it's giving, like, it doesn't give me enough impact to make me feel like this took forever or
Gotcha.
something,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like one of the reasons
It's
why I did them as like full pages, is because I wanted, because when I had them in like mock-ups, you couldn't tell that I painted them. And I was like that was kind of like one of the reasonings behind it, is that I wanted it to still like to have the detail of it, but that could have been achieved by doing like more like focused, zoomed in things like you were saying about my other drawing. So
well, even
yeah.
if we just split this page down the middle, because this is more like a 4x5 asset, right?
Mhm.
So here's your slide. Here is this thing. If you were to stretch your image a bit, and maybe I think like you could also include the format, the footer here if you really wanted to. I would actually consider redoing this, even if that's what they went through. But I would see the logo super big at the top. I would get a bigger image or a bigger view of, the painting that you did. And you could kind of, again, like, not have this negative space that's
I see
kind
what
of
you're
just
saying.
a bit distracting, and make it feel like a big cover, which again,
And then
that
they would
becomes
have
like
the,
your
yeah.
introduction to like how you can talk about this piece or how you could talk about your process.
So it's almost like extending it, leaving it as a magazine, but extending the sides as if it's like they were going to crop it themselves, but it still gives them the illusion of having like more. Is that what you mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I don't know. I think
like, here,
weird.
let me clear,
I have
let
like
me
a weird
clear
thought
this.
process for things, and I'm very visual. So that was helpful seeing that, but
Let's just say like this was your slide somewhat. We're just
okay.
going to go off the page, you know,
Mhm.
and that is like literally the slide that we're looking at, where
Okay.
it takes up, however much it takes up, because it's now like full bleed, and you could have text here that introduces the project itself, or who you worked with, whatever you want to title it is fine. Um, but that's kind of like my thought. Whereas
Okay.
this negative space all makes it feel really kind of tall and not as important as it should be.
Okay. That makes sense. Go big.
So before we sign off here, is there
Mhm.
any other questions you might have or things you want to talk about before
Yeah.
call it over?
Yeah, I appreciate like all the feedback. This is so awesome. It's nice to get a different perspective from someone who I think like I like your style and I like what you're doing within the community of graphic design. I
Thank you.
think it's really great that you're wanting to help people like myself who are starting out, and also I guess people who aren't just starting out, but I it's nice to get a different perspective for sure, because some of the stuff that I did in the portfolio wasn't exactly me. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's me, but like how it's also how the portfolio was set up, I had it completely different and it got like torn apart. And so it was kind of reassuring to know like I should be making it more like, more pop. And also I'm going to definitely be whittling it down and splitting it up, and I have a lot of work to do. but
Yeah.
but but luckily I have all my stuff is in InDesign, so it's all like, you don't like InDesign though. So
Yeah, I mean, there's, at the end of the day, some of these things are like, at the end of the day, a lot more and more you're sending links to people. And so I always pick the best. I try to pick the easiest thing that I can do, and also at the end deliver that link or whatever in the best possible way. And so you can continue to work in InDesign. I'm not going to take that away from you. You could also consider a tool like Keynote, or you can consider a tool
yeah,
like Figma, because,
I was
like,
thinking, yeah.
if we look at your
Figma is
presentation
something that
again.
I need to dabble in. I haven't, I
Yeah, I mean, you
very,
could. It's
yeah.
mess around with it, if you think making your portfolio in it is a good way to learn, go for it. But
Hmm.
it doesn't, like, people are like, oh my, like Figma, because it became so
It's
popular,
trendy.
because Adobe is acquiring it. People immediately think now I need to use it
Yeah.
or learn to use it. I'm like, do you really though? Like, are you working in websites and apps where you really need to learn it, because honestly, like you could do a lot of the same stuff in Photoshop or, you know,
Yeah.
other tools, but like if you're not going to use it for what it's like that main reason,
Yeah.
then you don't need to like worry yourself about it.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I'm an XD user, so
yeah,
I'm
I used to use XD. They're all the same, which is, you know, if you used XD, then Figma wouldn't be shouldn't be a problem.
okay.
But my main point is like, if I wasn't going to use Figma like every day for what I do, I would actually still consider it for presentations, because at the end of the day, like this is a 1920, or these can be 1920 by 1080 slides.
Yeah.
You can make a bunch of
Just
frames all at once. You can have somewhat of a template, and you can move through that a lot quicker. And if you really want to get fancy, you can animate text and all that stuff. Great. Like you could do that in PowerPoint. You could do that in Keynote. You could do that in Figma. You could do it in a number of different tools. I guess the reason why I bring it up is because I think InDesign can be a little hefty, and it locks you in
yes.
to having this in a PDF, which unfortunately is becoming more and more not looked down upon, but like people are like, just send me a link. It's like
Yeah,
2023.
I know. And that's why I was like, okay, well, at least I have like it in in a Google Doc for
I mean,
now.
you have the information down, right? So like copying and pasting is not
Yes,
terrible.
exactly. That's why I'm like, I did all the like the majority of the legwork, aside from doing like now putting in my case studies. I have to go get those off my hard drive, and but yeah, it will be interesting to work through this, because I'm also and incorporating my rebranding too into it. So
I would do this. Like you have a lot, you have a lot of things that you want to do, right? You have a lot of
yeah.
things like you want to license your work, and you want to get more branding clients, and you want to be able to do more work. Awesome. That's great. I know I said, I mentioned working on two things, right? You can kind of do it. What I would recommend, and this is from someone, not necessarily as like a graphic designer, as someone who's a person who wants to do a lot of things, and it sounds like you have way more shit on your plate than I do. I would say this.
Just a kid.
Try to prioritize the things that you think are going to have payoff. Like, so we're just talking about this out loud and spitballing. You can go to branding clients, or you can go to clients about what you do as a graphic design partner, right? Because I know you mentioned branding again, but like you can also find opportunity in between those cracks of like, oh, well, it looks like I can help you with your current brand on social media and stuff like that, right? You could do that fairly quickly if you were to put that work together, right? And that could be running, and you can be sending emails and getting in touch with people because you have that stuff organized. You could do that fairly quickly. The art licensing, or like any sort of things that we talked about where you're like creating a new section in your portfolio or whatever, that could be done in the background maybe once those other things are finished.
Or when I'm like sitting, and because the artwork that I would be building to put in the portfolio is stuff that I just kind of enjoy doing, so I can do it I don't find it stressful, so I can do it while I'm like hanging out with my kid. I can be just like drawing on my laptop. So yeah
I think you'll end up, like, again, coming from someone who's also trying to do this for myself at the moment, where I'm trying to make sure I prioritize the things that I know can get me some progress financially, or like, keep me going for a bit, done first before I get to the things that I know I want to dig into and be creative about. So try to weigh those, prioritize those, and get those out the door before starting like the big, hefty, sizable things that can take. Like, just be honest with yourself on how long these things are going to take, and then like really think about it.
I know my website is the one thing that I'm like, oh, like
that's a perfect example. Okay, let's do this. Like, if you were to say, okay, I'm gonna put my presentation in something like Figma because it acts as a website, because I can send people a link and they can click through it. Now that would push you into a place where you could teach yourself about Figma, how to like kind of prototype and animate things in there. Great. Could you get that done within a week? And then there you go, you have a link. you know, like,
yeah. And that's a
because,
priority, is getting my portfolio up to snuff so that I get people like what they see now. So,
but it's a link, but
Mhm.
I think my point is like, it's a link. You could
Yeah.
link that in an email any way you wanted to, you know,
Yeah.
you could like, here's my here's my work.com, and the link is the Figma link, whatever. But
Gotcha.
like, that's going to work. And it's going to be like a website if you were to design it in a way like that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's going to eliminate the fact that you would potentially need to like relearn a platform and learn some HTML and CSS and
I
like
got the
figure out how to
HTML
like
and
make these.
CSS, and I'm doing it's all in WordPress, but I effed it up when I first made it, and I changed the master style sheet, and then I went in and changed the individual sheets, and then I messed it up. I messed up the template. I messed it up, and it doesn't convert to mobile properly. It's a hot mess.
There you go.
So
All the
yeah,
stuff that you didn't want to deal with, now you have to deal with, you know,
yeah,
or you can figure out that better solution of like, how do I get there somewhat with something that's a link that is easy,
yes,
you know, and
and that's
designed,
like, yeah, and I think
and
that
you're
that's
not going to
probably
have
a
two
better
birds with one
bet.
stone at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. I'm gonna have to get Figma.
It's free.
Oh,
That's
I
the best
know.
part.
I'm very happy about that. I don't have any money right now, so I can't.
It's
Like I
free,
I just
and
paid for the Adobe thing. So like,
yeah, I mean, I think, and not only that, but it would then, you know, you would have learned a project or a tool that
yes,
a lot of people are using right now, a lot of
a
teams are using.
lot of
So
people
like,
use them.
you know, you're just learning, like you're just learning something new. You're not getting forgotten behind because you're still in InDesign, you know, like.
My teacher, my instructor was such like, it's part of the curriculum, right? But it's like, I mean, I'm happy I know how to use it because I love my master styles and my master pages and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And the typesetting is just, I just,
it's a good tool, but it has its uses,
I know. And like, yeah,
and
I need to,
something like this can be done on a way like it
it's,
doesn't need all of that, I guess, you know, for
yeah,
something like this.
exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it. I'll keep you up to date. So as things
Definitely.
progress, I'll send you a link to my Figma.
Yeah, definitely. It was nice to meet you, Anne Marie. And like, you know, you have my email. If you have any questions, feel free to
Yeah.
send them over. After this, you'll get an email. It has like 3 questions in there if you don't mind filling that out. So this
Mhm.
way I can know where to send the recording to this, the link to this recording to.
Perfect. Do you have like anywhere I can give you a review or anything?
It's all in there.
Okay,
Thanks,
good.
Anne Marie. You have a good one. Okay.
You too. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye bye.